Hey, Steph, can you hear us?
Sure can.
Great. So Trustee Nordyke is going to be in here. And then I don't know if Trustee Shipley is planning on joining in this room or not. So
Okay.
he might be here or he might be on the telephone.
Okay.
All
Sounds
right.
good. Thank you, sir. Nice to meet you, sir. I was waving back. It's just my virtual background makes my hand disappear.
Thank you. I had to drop a mask to smile.
Yeah, right. COVID life.
What do we do?
Are you excited for your first meeting?
It looks like it's just housekeeping.
Yeah, yeah, you're disappointed. You want something juicier?
No, this would be a great start.
At least it's a long one.
Yep.
It would be anticlimactic if there was like 2 items and then you're out.
Yeah, that would. I'm waiting for the day they'd be all in one room.
Yeah, that would be a good day. Sounds like they're working on it.
Yeah, my daughter works at Spectrum. She said that day they did it all in the first injections.
Yeah.
They did 5.
Oh,
It was a warm-up day, I guess.
yeah. It's been something to behold, being on the front lines of something like that. I suppose, right? It's happened in other times, but we haven't seen it, you know.
Right.
I think that's part of like, I think just as a member of the public watching it, you know, it was like from the beginning, you're like, oh, well, so this was my understanding. And then things would change and develop. And, you know, so it was hard to like watch it happen because you're like, wait a minute, I thought you can't take ibuprofen and now you can. And first it hurts and now it helps. And it's like watching the science kind of develop has been interesting.
It has. We'll get through it.
Yeah. We just didn't know how good we had it.
You may have already had it.
Yeah, hopefully.
My son's shop, 10 people tested positive, but only 3 had symptoms.
Okay.
The other 7 didn't know they had anything.
Yeah, that's such a strange aspect of that too, isn't it? How like one person just doesn't seem to stop them in their tracks at all. And then someone else gets so ill. And it seems like they've really tried to like consistently work out this like rhyme and reason to it. And there just doesn't seem to be one. It just seems like everybody's individual immune system and body kind of does its own thing.
Yeah.
It's wild. I see you, Jim. 1 second. Hello, sir.
Hi, ma'am.
How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing pretty good.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, Timmy. How you doing?
Happy as can be.
I didn't think we were gonna meet in a township.
I found my way.
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Jim.
Hello, hello. Hello. You stay down there. I'm gonna stay down there.
You know, besides social distancing, maybe I just plain don't like you.
Oh, there you go. Then there's that.
I'm guessing Ben's
Hi,
coming.
Tom.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Ben. Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Jim.
That looks like Ben
It is.
at 28th Street
Good picture.
with a blue sky.
Exactly.
I like Jim's picture better. Got palm leaves and sunset.
Yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me of the spring down in Florida.
Oh, I thought you were just living in the high end of the Cascade.
No. The Thornapple River doesn't look like the ocean.
I was gonna say, I haven't seen Thornapple that wide in a long time.
I'll put this on for you. It doesn't matter to me.
Sun going down of the Gulf of New Mexico.
When you going, Jim?
What?
When are you going?
I don't know, John. With COVID, we didn't get to go last year or this year, and I don't know if the restrictions are off, usually in April.
Oh, okay. Well, you sound good and you're looking good.
Thank you. Getting better all the time. It's a lot of work, but it's getting there.
I know several couples that aren't going to Florida this year like they traditionally do.
Yeah, it's probably safest not to go. But I don't know, some people go anyway.
Well, California's got a real mess out there.
Yeah. Yeah, they do.
Sunflower's kind of busy.
Yeah, I like those. They're cheery.
Hi, Tom.
I Sue.
Nice flowers.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
like
Your
those.
phone will vibrate.
I got black-eyed Susans that come up every summer out in the yard, all around the yard.
Yep.
Wish I relaxed longer though.
They are cheery.
Mute yourself.
Hello, Mr. Pierce.
Good evening. There's
Who's
Ken.
in the conference room?
Timmy and Shipley so far.
Gotcha.
I was gonna do it by phone, but then Ben sent me a little message saying that this was available. I hate this phone stuff.
It's hard when you can't see people.
It is,
Don't you have a camera with your computer, John?
Oops.
right here. This little cell phone.
Don't you have an
What?
iPad?
Yeah,
You can do it on the iPad and use a
Yeah.
video.
I know. My computer does not have a camera in it, no.
Your iPad does.
Yep, I know I could do it with this. But then I'd
No,
be
I mean
all the time.
don't you have a township iPad?
Nope,
Oh, you should
Good.
have one.
yeah, I don't. Never had one. Ben and I have been getting pretty good at communicating on the internet, so. There's Grace.
Hey, can you hear me?
And
Yep.
Yeah. 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 How did some of our, like some of our customers at work, they weren't way down here. Yeah, beard protector. Yeah. Okay. 7 o'clock, boss.
Okay. Oh, thank you for the reminder. You might have to do more of those tonight. It's now 7 o'clock, December 16th, 2020. Welcome to the Cascade Township Board meeting. I'll now call the meeting to order. All board members are present. Hard to tell with Zoom. Is that true, Manager Swayze?
Yes, all of the board members are present.
Okay, thank you. Article 2, Pledge of Allegiance. Assistant Manager Fast, thanks for finding a virtual flag for us.
We got a real one.
All right, ready? I pledge allegiance
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United
United
States
States
of America
and
and to the republic
for which
which
it
stands
one
one
nation,
nation under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice.
justice for all.
Thank you. Article 3, approval of the agenda for tonight's
Chip
meeting.
makes a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I'd like to note a couple of errors. First, that the agenda's date that we published to the put out to the public Friday was wrong, and I wanted to apologize for that and a couple other errors. Admittedly, I've been busy learning the ropes of being a brand new supervisor, and I did not review the agenda beforehand. So I will do so moving forward, and I just wanted to apologize to anyone in the audience who saw that. Second, Article 9, appointment.
We have to take a vote.
You have to take a
Oh,
vote
just for
on-
comments?
No,
On the agenda, you have to take a vote to approve the agenda.
There was another error I wanted to bring up. That was my fault. Article 9, under appointments to various commissions, I mistakenly referred to Caledonia as a township, not a village, or it's the village. So I should have, that was an error on my end. And then lastly, it doesn't change the agenda, but I just wanted to clarify that in the memorandum regarding planning commission appointments, the township will advertise and solicit applications as stated in the memo, but that includes all current members. They are all up for consideration. So I didn't realize that that may not be clear. And it's my understanding that all 3 current members would like reappointment, and none of them have been ruled out at this time as far as whether or not they would be considered. So is there or any more discussion?
Are you gonna, as long as you're talking about item 9, are you gonna take those? I would recommend we take each of the appointments separately and not as a whole. So if that
Yes.
has to be an amendment to the agenda, I would recommend that. And whoever supported it, if they could do it subject to that.
That was me. I'll second.
So we have a motion to amend tonight's agenda in that each commission and committee where appointments are up for consideration and approval will be bifurcated. We'll address those separately, taking that into consideration. Are we ready for a vote?
There.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
All those opposed? The motion is approved, or tonight's agenda is approved. Thank you. Thanks for bearing with me with your brand new leader who hasn't led before. Article 4, presentations. This is the part where staff members can provide updates to us and also residents on different issues. Starting in the new year, we will have regular updates, but tonight we don't have any presentations scheduled. To audience members, if there are issues that residents would like to hear more about, public safety, upcoming projects that the township is working on, please reach out to us, and that can help us determine who we will bring into these future presentations. But having none at this time, we'll move on to Article 5, public comments. The agenda as written states that residents may comment on anything in the agenda not scheduled for public hearing. If there's any residents in the audience right now, I think it's beneficial to the board if there are comments, typically there aren't, but to listen to those at this time. And it doesn't have to be specifically for, we will get to the public hearing, but if there are comments by the public at this time, Stephanie Fast or Assistant Manager Fast, can you?
Yes, thank you. If any member of the audience would like to speak to the board, you may raise your hand and you will have your microphone unmuted. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes each. And if you're joining us by telephone, please press *9 and you can get your turn that way. And please note that this meeting is being recorded. So we will take comments at this time.
Hearing no comment, anything from the other side?
There are no comments, Supervisor Lesperance.
Okay, thank you. Article 6, the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Support by Shipley.
Sorry, I just didn't
Who
hear.
seconded?
Shipley.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any discussion from board members? Noting that it's a consent agenda.
Supervisor Lesperance, if I could just talk on one item real quick.
Thank you, Manager Swayze.
So Article 6D, receive and file communication, is a communication from Barnum regarding the agreement that the Township Board approved in September and confirmed last month to purchase the doctor's office on Thornapple River Drive by Tassel Park. The seller has requested us to enter into a amended agreement. It doesn't have any material effect on the township or how much we pay or anything like that. It just allows the seller to sell the property and to reinvest that money tax deferred in another investment property. So because we had an agreement to form, I thought it was appropriate to bring it in front of the Township Board, but it really doesn't change anything on our end that we're doing for that project.
Thank you, Manager Swayze. Any other comments from any board members? I have one brief comment. Article 6, Section B, receive and file minutes. Specifically the Township Board minutes from November 18th. So this, I think it's this last meeting. I saw in there, there was a resident, Mr. Craig Merlin, made a comment. The minutes don't say anything as far as what that comment was, other than that he made one. And I wanted to, I remember what his comment was, and it's funny, but it's not funny. Mr. Merlin's comment at that last meeting was that he wanted to note that his comment from a previous meeting was incorrect in his mind. And the reason that he was bringing it up is because it had happened at another meeting in the past. So I wanted to know if Mr. Merlin is in the audience tonight. If I were in your shoes and I see a third reference to my comments that say nothing, I may feel frustrated and unheard, but please take a note that I just wanted to mention that. And I apologize on behalf of the township. I assure you that you were heard. And in the future, we will have a process to make sure that the minutes reflect that. Thank you.
Can I make a comment, Supervisor?
It was a resident, Mr. Craig Merlin, C-R-A-I-G, and then last name M-E-U-R-L-I-N. It's in the minutes, and it doesn't. It just says that he made a comment.
May I make a comment, please?
Of course.
So the procedure for minutes is that we record what was done, what action was taken, not everything that was said. That's why the conversation is not in the minutes. It's merely a record of what was accomplished in that meeting, not every single conversation. That's why it's not all in there. Just for your
Well, we may have
information.
to talk about that, because if I'm a resident and this is a public hearing and I made a note that I had been misquoted or incorrectly quoted, and then my comment was not addressed, I may feel like, why is the township not, that one, at best, I'm not being heard. And I haven't noticed that in other commission or minutes. So I don't think that's necessarily the right way to do it. I don't think that really benefits the board or the residents. Clerk Slater.
Well, the purpose of a consent agenda is to actually expedite the meeting. So that's my point for that.
Understood. Yep. And the purpose of meeting minutes is to record what was said. So we can
No.
talk about this later if you like. Any other items up for discussion? Having no more, is there are all those in favor of approving the consent agenda?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? The consent agenda is approved. Next item up, financial actions. Specifically in this week or this meeting, the approval of the fiscal year 2020 budget amendments. Manager Swayze, can you please walk us through this this item? I know we had some questions from residents that you're the guy to answer. So if you could do that, thank you.
Yep, definitely. So thank you, Supervisor LaSperance. So this will be the final action that the board will take on the 2020 budget. So there are decisions that the board makes throughout the year that they approve that eventually have to be through an accounting housekeeping measure added into the budget as well. So as you read through the document that I provided for you, I tried to give explanation to each one of these items and what it is related to. So for this year, we also had some issues that were related to the pandemic as well. In certain instances, we did not get the revenue that we had expected from the state, from our state revenue sharing. We had anticipated quite a bit of interest on our fund balances, and we weren't able to realize that as well. So a lot of the budget amendments take that into consideration. But the primary budget amendments in here are going to be for large projects that the Township Board approved during the year. So for example, in the general fund for our capital outlay, we approved four big projects this year that we had been saving money for: the cemetery expansion, the Laraway Lake drainage improvements, the Schoolhouse Creek project, and then the renovations of the Township Hall. So each one of those projects were approved individually by the board during the year and authorized. And the budget amendment process is really the last step in that actually officially amends our budget to include those items. So there's quite a bit of information here. I'm more than happy to answer any questions that the board members have. I do know that you had gotten a couple questions, Supervisor LaSperance, and I thought that they were for the approval of the 2021 budget that we'll get to later. But if you think that they're in regards to this, I can certainly answer those now.
I think you're right. I think it's just my error. Thank you for catching that.
No problem. So,
right.
Other than that, the document has three pieces to it. There is the narrative that I think is probably the most helpful to everybody that's trying to understand what the budget amendments are. And then we have the resolution that actually needs to be approved. So this will be a resolution with a roll call vote. And there's an amendment to that actually has the line items that specifically talk about the dollar amounts.
Thank you, Manager Swayze. Any comments from the board or questions, discussion?
I move to approve the 2020 budget amendments. I went
Support.
through them all very thoroughly. I'm sure everybody else did. And Ben, you did a nice job summarizing those.
Shipley supports.
Clerk Slater, I believe this is a roll call vote.
Yes, I'll take the roll call vote.
Thank you.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
trustee McDonald,
Yes.
treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
clerk Slater, yes, supervisor Lesbrant.
Yes.
Thank you.
The fiscal year 2020 budget amendments are approved.
Thank you.
Next item, Article 8, unfinished business. Having none, any discussion on that if there aren't any? We'll move on to new business, the substance of the meeting, Article 9. First item, 080-2020. The board will consider the request to hold the triathlon and approve resolutions for Grand Rapids Triathlon to close public streets on June 19th, June 20th, and 2021. And this is a roll call, requires a roll call vote, I believe, correct, Clerk Slater?
Yes.
Okay. Is there Ms. Corhorn?
To Sandra.
Yeah. Yep.
Thank
Hi,
you.
thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Lesbrant. So this is a request from the Grand Rapids Triathlon organizers, and they would like to hold the triathlon on Saturday, June 19th and Sunday, June 20th, 2021. Historically, this event has been a one-day event held on a Sunday in Cascade and Ada. But this year, for 2021, the organizers are requesting it be spread over 2 years to improve the event. And then just because of the uncertainty of the status of COVID-19, this would allow for some more social distancing. So if you recall, this event takes place in Ada Township, the majority of it in Ada Township and to the east. So Lowell Township, Ionia County, but the running event of the triathlon does occur in Cascade Township. And so really there's two main changes to the event for 2021. The first one is, of course, moving it from a one-day event to 2 days. And again, that's COVID related. But they also believe that holding this event over 2 days will bring additional athletes to Cascade area hotels, restaurants, shops. And they have reached out to various hotels in the township, as well as the Forest Hills Business Association to discuss how to engage with the Cascade business community. They have also moved the transition area from Buttrick Avenue to Ada Park. And while that doesn't really impact Cascade a whole lot, in the previous years, it did require an overnight road closure at Buttrick and Thornapple River Drive. And by moving that transition area up to Ada Park, it removes that overnight road closure on Buttrick Avenue. So the presentation is in your packet, and you're looking at it, just the beginning slide on the screen tonight. And I'm sure John and John, the applicants, would go through that real quick if you'd like. But really, as far as the Saturday event is concerned, it would be over with roads open by 11:30 a.m. They are holding these short events on Saturday. So the sprints will be held on Saturday. So roads will be open by 11:30 a.m. But they're saying the majority of the athletes will be off the course by 9:30. And again, permitting the event on Saturday does spread out those applicants. You kind of cut the number of participants in half, some on Saturday, some on Sunday. So it eases congestion on the course as well. Ada Township did review this request at their November 23rd meeting. They did approve the 2-day event for 2021. If approved tonight, certainly we'll monitor it. If we get complaints following the event, we can always move it back to a 1-day event in the future. Quite honestly, this is year 10 for this event, and they have it down to a science. They run it very smoothly. We have not received complaints on this event in a number of years, so they operate it very well. And we've met with them, both Ada Township and Cascade staff have met with them numerous times over the last few months, just to modify changes, and we're comfortable that they are doing everything that they can to minimize the disruption and any negative impacts to Cascade and Ada residents. So In your packet are two resolutions for road closures. One resolution addresses the road closures for the Saturday event. The second resolution addresses the road closures for the Sunday event. Those are both in your packet. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but the applicants are here as well.
Sandra,
you.
is the Sunday event extended times, or is that
It
the
is.
same?
So the Sunday event is exact same as it
Okay.
has been in the past. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome.
I just wanted to add that I live off of Thorn Apple River Drive, and I've watched this, and they do a fantastic job. They've got it very well organized. Residents can get out if needed safely because they've got so many helpers there to manage the race and make sure the runners are safe. They clean up afterwards. It's a fantastic event, and you guys have done a great job, so congratulations. I will certainly support this.
Shipley has a comment. Just a short coattail on what Tom was saying. Every year it gets better. The first couple of years was a little rough. The volunteers were a little misunderstanding, but I'll tell you, it's fantastic. And I think that Saturday's added event is just going to be minimal inconvenience. I don't foresee any problem with it at all. That's all.
Assistant Manager Fast, are there any public members of the public that would like to comment on this agenda item?
We do not have any comments at this time.
Thank you. Is there a motion to approve both resolutions as written?
So moved.
Support.
Who seconded?
Tom did.
Thank you.
You can have it.
Resolution 080-2020 is approved.
We have to take a
vote.
roll
Wait.
call.
Oh, thank you. Sorry.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesbrant.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the motion to approve resolution 080-2020 is approved.
Thank
Next
you all.
Thank you.
item on-
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, John and John.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
And thank you, Ms. Corhorn. Next item, consider pay draw number 5 for the Centennial Park Sidewalks and Medians project. Ms. Corhorn, do you want to take a shot at this, or Manager Swayze?
I can address it real quick for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. This is the Centennial Park Sidewalk Lights and Median project. This actually started in 2019, but we are finally wrapping it up. This is pay draw 5 in the amount of $33,570.43. And everything was approved by Fishbeck. A majority of the project is complete. We are holding $2,000 in retainage for the replacement of some median plantings, which will occur in the spring. So with that, we're recommending approval of pay draw 5.
Any discussion?
Sandra, I got a question. We see the advantage of this, and I know a lot of the residents up in Centennial Park were behind it. Have you got any positive comments back from them, hopefully?
I have received positive comments back from them. Yes.
Okay, good. Any
Yeah,
negative comments?
especially the sidewalks. Everybody likes the sidewalks.
Okay. Out of curiosity, any negative comments?
There are a few. There's always a few, but probably more about the medians than anything.
Okay.
And geese.
So
Yeah, I saw that piece on sidewalk. Okay, thanks, Sandra.
you're welcome.
Is there a motion to approve pay draw number 5 for the Centennial Park side?
Motion made by Shipley to approve the paying.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So the motion to approve Draw 5 as written in the agenda is approved.
Thank you.
Thanks. I think you might get to go home now, Ms. Corhorn, but I'm not sure.
Thank you.
We might need you. Next item, resolution to adopt the 2021 poverty exemption policy and guidelines. And this one calls for a roll call, correct?
Yes.
I'd be happy to handle that, Supervisor Lesperance.
Thank you, Manager Swayze.
No problem. So this is a bit of a housekeeping item that the Township Board approves every year. So we have a policy in place that allows for our residents, if they meet certain federal income guidelines, to claim poverty status in the township to be exempt from property taxes. So the policy calls for us to update those federal poverty guidelines every year. And that's what this resolution is requesting. So the policy will remain in place as written, and the only thing that will change is the poverty guidelines that are listed in the staff report.
Thank you, Manager Swayze. Assistant Manager Fast, are there any public comments on this item?
Supervisor Lesperance, we have no comments at this time.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Motion by Shipley to approve.
Second by Timmy.
Thank you. Any discussion from the board? Hearing none, Clerk Slater, could you please take care of the roll call?
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes,
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance,
Yes.
thank you.
So the resolution to adopt 2021 poverty exemption policy and guidelines is approved as written. Next item up, consider the approval of the purchase of a new township phone system. Manager Swayze,
Great,
this one's
thank
on
you.
you.
All right. So we currently operate under a Toshiba phone system that was purchased in 2013. That was actually one of the first projects that I was involved in when I came here. That project originally cost $38,923 and was for 57 phones. We initially had expected that we would get a 10+ year life system out of that phone system. However, we learned last year that the Toshiba phone, the phone division of Toshiba has gone out of business and our phone system is no longer supported. So our vendors aren't able to get licensing for any upgrades or any additions to the system. And if there's a significant problem, we are worried that we won't be able to address it because there's no software support from the supplier anymore. So given that we are looking to move into a new facility in early 2021, myself and Director of Inspections, Brian Wilson, who is also our de facto IT guy, thought it would be a good opportunity for us to address the phone system. So right now there's two main options for the phone system in the market. The first one is completely cloud-based solution where we wouldn't have anything on our servers. It would really just be the phone sets, and then we would connect to a cloud-based server in order to host our phone system. So there's low setup costs for a cloud-based system. And then the way that it's charged is really a monthly charge per device. So for each device you have in your system, they charge you part of a monthly bill and you pay that every month. For those systems, the initial costs are low, but the recurring costs are higher. The second type is a hybrid system where we host the software on our system. So there is an initial higher cost, but there's no monthly user fee associated with that. So basically you pay for the system up front, and then after that you are good to go. So I asked Director of Inspections Wilson to put together a recommendation for us, and he did look into both of those options. So the first was the cloud-based system provided by Comcast. The initial setup for that system is $1,950. And then we have a monthly cost going forward of $1,296.75 based on the number of handsets that we are anticipated. The second was a hybrid system provided by Mitel BSV Communications, which is a company that we've worked in the past. So we would have to buy the software package, which would include 5 years of support at a cost of $17,515. There would be labor cost involved in setting that up, somewhere between $9,800 and $14,000. And then we would have to buy the actual physical phones as well. The cost for that would be $15,000 to $21,000. So for option 2, that we think the final price would be in the $42,000 to $45,000 range. So you see there's a little cost analysis there as well. So to go with the physical system, the payback on the investment is 33 months. So after 33 months, the physical system cost would be cheaper for us than the cloud-based system cost. So I do want to note one thing before I turn it over for questions. So this would be a 2021 project. However, it's not currently included in the 2021 draft budget. So when we met to talk about the budget earlier this month, this project wasn't in there, and I didn't want to make the change without understanding if the Township Board was going to approve this or not. So if the Township Board does choose to approve the phone system project, I will request when we get to the budget action item, if the Township Board chooses to approve the budget, they add this project in as well. And the way that it would be budgeted would be 50% of the cost, or $22,500, would come out of the general fund. 25% of the cost, or $11,250, would come out of the fire fund. And 25% of the cost, or $11,250, would come out of the building department fund. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I do want to say that the staff is recommending that we go with the BSB Communications, the hybrid physical model.
And what is the monthly cost now?
So we have a hybrid system as well. So we don't have a monthly cost.
Okay,
It's really the cost of our Comcast internet connection.
okay.
Ben, I have a question, but I think you answered it already. The fire department will be included in this upgrade, correct?
Correct. Yep. So everybody is on the same phone system now, and everybody will have to be included in the upgrade.
I remember the last two snafus when the library phone system was passed down to the township and passed down to the fire department. And that wasn't a way to do business. So I think that a hybrid system, if it's going to be supported for at least 3 years, would be the way to go. You say paybacks in 33 months.
What do they estimate the life of this to be, Ben?
So they would estimate the life of this to be 10 plus years again. But that was the estimate that we got for the Toshiba system. So we think we've chosen a system that is robust. The phone portion of the Toshiba's business model wasn't their main product. So we'll be looking at a product where the phone system is more in their wheelhouse.
Can we negotiate if they're going to provide support for 5 years? And we expect it to last 10. Could we get them to support it for 10 years?
So I think that they would be more than willing to support for 10 years. The cost upfront includes 5 years of support. So in starting year 6, we will have, or sometime in year 5, we'll have to negotiate support for the next couple of years.
Better than to pay it up front and have them go out like Toshiba.
Yeah, exactly.
I make a motion to approve.
Support.
Who seconded?
I
John,
think Tom did.
Thank you.
Supervisor Lesperance, there is a public comment.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Manager Fast. Go ahead.
Resident Craig Merlin would like to speak.
Okay, Mr. Merlin, can you try to limit your comment to 3 minutes, but go ahead. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, just 2 quick questions. One is, I noticed you didn't put a discount rate on the monthly payments as you go out for that 3 years or 33 months, which would make the payout period longer than 33 months, depending on what the discount rate is. And the second question tied into that is telephone technology changing so dramatically now that it makes sense to have the larger upfront payment system? And what would be the cost of, what would be the penalty to Toshiba if they in fact did not continue in this business for 5 years, we having paid the cost upfront for the system? Or not Toshiba, but the B2B or whatever you are, the hybrid system you were talking about. It seems as though with one is upfront, high cost, other one pay as you go. What happens if the high upfront cost, when you apply a discount rate to it, and going forward, if they elect, if technology changes such that it becomes not very usable in 4 years, let's say, where are we?
Thank you, Mr. Merlin. Manager Swayze, I'm happy to punt this one to you and listen.
Sure. To be quite honest, I probably don't have the exact answers right now. As far as the discount rate is concerned, the calculation that was made in the staff report is just meant to be exemplary, to exemplify, simply, where that break-even point might be. It wasn't intended to be a detailed fiscal analysis with a decision to be made solely on the finances of the issue. So the second item, if the system became obsolete in 4 years, I don't think that there would be anything that the township would be able to do about that. If the company went out of business or the system ceased to be operational, that's something that we might be able to have some type of clawback on that we could consider at that point. But I don't know what that would be right now. I would have to do a little bit more research on that.
Thank you. Mr. Merlin, any follow-up questions or comments? I'm sorry, I don't have anything to add either as far as answers.
No, that's fine. It's just two things that popped to mind when hearing the discussion and knowing how fast technology is evolving these days.
Mr. Merlin?
Yes.
Mr. Merlin, what is, in your understanding of what is the current discount rate?
Well, that's an interesting question.
I would guess it'd be less than 1%.
Well, that would be if we base it purely on interest rates. If we base it on effectively a cost of capital, if you were looking at a private citizen or a private company, that's what you would do. And that would be far higher than 1% when you look at a hurdle rate for a capital project like this. But again, it just struck me that was, as Manager Swayze pointed out, simply a strict $1,200 3 years out is worth the same as essentially $1,200 today. And it isn't. But I just wanted to raise it for the board's just consideration and thinking about what would you put as an effective discount rate?
Thank you, Mr. Merlin. It's a very good question.
Bill?
Hello. Yeah.
Yes.
Jim Byrne. I got a couple questions for you.
Call for the question.
Sorry, who?
Yep, I believe the motion and second has been taken, so we'll need a vote. Supervisor Les Prince.
Thank you. Thank you. Hearing no more discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion is approved.
Great, thank you.
Next on the agenda, consider approval of the 2021 Township meeting schedule. Manager Swayze, can you walk us through this one, please?
Yep, I would be happy to. So this is an item that the Township Board approves every year. It's a 2021 meeting schedule for the boards and commissions and committees of the township. So there's no major changes to the 2021 meeting schedule, other than every now and then there's a meeting that's moved to accommodate either a possible election date or a recognized holiday. And on the actual calendar, those are designated by an asterisk. So highlights include the Township Board to meet the second and fourth Wednesday of each month. And there's 2 budget review meetings currently scheduled for, October and November. The Planning Commission to meet the first and third Monday of each month. The Zoning Board of Appeals to meet the second Tuesday of each month. Parks Committee meets 4 times a year on the days indicated, and those are third Tuesdays in selected months. The DDA meets the third Tuesday of each month. The Historic Society meets the first Thursday of each month. And then there's 4 standing committees of the Township Board, and they meet the first, second, third, and fourth Wednesday of the month. As I mentioned, we do move some of the meetings around to accommodate holidays, and those were done in the similar way that they're done previously. And I do have to fall on my sword on one item. Right now we have the Historic Committee, which isn't technically a committee of the township, but we put it on the schedule anyways, scheduled to meet January 1st. That obviously won't happen. So we need to change the Historic Committee meeting for January to that second Thursday in January 8th.
I don't
You'll
know,
handle that
that
change?
might hit.
Yeah, yep. I will. If the board approves it, I can handle that change before the meeting schedule gets published. And then we do publish this meeting schedule to be in compliance with the Township Open Meetings Act.
Thank you.
Ben, I have a comment. You said the first Thursday in January is actually the 7th.
Maybe
You said it was
that,
the 8th, but that's a Friday. The first
Okay.
Thursday is actually the 7th. So it's not a conflict with New Year's?
so what happened was it's on the schedule as the 1st, but it needs to be the 7th.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification.
Assistant Manager Pass, any public comments on this item?
There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting schedule for 2021. Who seconded?
Shipley,
Thank you.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion to approve the 2021 Township meeting schedule is passed. Next item, the board will now consider approval of resolution to provide general fund financial support to the fire fund. This item recalls a roll call vote. Manager Swady, can you please walk us through? There was some, you and I have talked about, but there were a couple of resident questions on this and the reasoning behind it.
Yep, I'd be happy to. So just to give you a little bit of background information, in June of 2024, the Township Board approved a resolution to place fire millage protection services ballot proposal on the August 3rd, 2004 primary election for 0.5800 mils. And that resolution and then the ballot language actually had a specific item related to this. And I'm going to read it verbatim because I think it's important for people to understand. So the language on the millage request stated that the Township Board agrees that should a ballot proposal be approved by the electors, subject to the immediately following sentence, it will commit annually during the time the approved millage is levied a minimum of $400,000 from the general fund for fire protection services. Such annual commitment may only be suspended by formal resolution of the Township Board upon a finding that severe economic conditions exist which would cause a budget deficit without such suspension. So the background information on that is actually this millage was turned down by the electors of Cascade Township in the election prior to when it was approved. And when the committee that was working on the millage went out to the residents and tried to understand why that happened, the reason is that there was a fear among some of the residents in the community that if this millage was approved, the township was going to stop providing general fund support. So they saw a situation where there was a potential where now this new millage generates, say the new millage generates $400,000 for the fire department, that the township board was going to say, hey, okay, now we don't have to provide this $400,000 anymore. When in actuality, the millage was supposed to be to provide full-time funding for station number 2. So they decided to put this language specifically in the millage, and then it passed. So that passed in August of 2004, and it's currently scheduled to be levied until 2024. And every year, the township board has made the required appropriation when the millage has been levied. So during the fiscal year 2014 budget process, it was recommended by the Finance Committee that appropriation be made each year by formal resolution as well. And we've done that each year since 2014. So we had our budget review earlier in December, and the 2021 budget was developed with that $400,000 transfer in place. It indicates that severe conditions which would cause a budget deficit without such suspension do not exist. So with that, if it is approved, the next item on our agenda, the budget does have that $400,000 transfer. And the committee of the whole, which reviewed the budget, is recommending the township board approve the resolution of general fund support to the fire fund.
Thank you, Manager Swayze. Any comments, questions?
And this is something we approve every year, correct?
Yes, we approved it every year. So we've done the transfer every year since 2004. We decided in 2014 to start doing it by resolution as well.
Correct, right.
I move
the
to
resolution.
approve the transfer of 400,000 from the general fund to the fire fund.
Support.
Assistant Manager Fast, are there any members in the audience with their hand raised for comment?
There's no public comment at this time.
Thank you. All those in favor? Oh,
Roll
is this
call
roll
vote.
call? Sorry. Clerk Slater, go ahead.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes,
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance.
Yes.
Thank you.
So this item is approved as written. Next item, 086-2020. Public hearing on the proposed 2021 general and special fund budgets. Excuse me. I may need your help if I mess up how to get this into public hearing.
make a motion to go to public hearing.
Support.
Thank you. Approved? Vote?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. We're in public hearing. Thank you.
Great. If you don't mind, Supervisor Lesperance, I have a small presentation I'd like to review with the board.
Yes, thank you, Manager Swayze. I appreciate it.
Great. So in the packet that was provided for you, I did provide the full 100-page presentation that was given during the public review budget session in early December. And I will spare you guys. I'm not going to go through every single one of those slides tonight. And I can see the fear in some of your eyes. But I do want to make sure that I do touch on a couple items for the members of the public that may not have had a chance to attend that session. So if we can go to the next slide, Steph. So the majority of the interest in the budget always seems to be the general fund, because the general fund is where the township board has the most discretion as to where they're spending their money. And the general fund includes things like the township board department, the supervisor manager department, the clerk, the treasurer, the assessing department, the elections department, buildings and grounds, cemeteries, our administrative services, the drains, roads, our yard waste removal program, our street lights, our transportation program, our planning, our parks, our historical committee, benefits and insurance for our employees, of course, our capital outlay and debt service. And then we also assist other funds through transfers as well. We just talked about that. The general fund does transfer money to the fire fund. There's also small transfers to our dam repair maintenance fund and our cemetery trust fund as well. And the general fund can always be thought of activities that are generally funded through tax dollars, though it is worth noting that a lot of the departments in the general fund have associated fee revenues as well. We could go to the next slide, Stephanie. So just want to talk a little bit about how our general fund property taxes are calculated. So the millage rate simply means $1 of taxes per $1,000 of taxable value on real and personal property in the township. This year, our millage rate is 0.9632 mils, and that is actually reduced from fiscal year 2020. So in fiscal year 2020, our rate was 0.9674 mils. There's a process that's calculated by the county and the state to ensure, based on our Headley rate, that our revenues do not exceed, our revenues on existing property do not exceed the, basically the CIP in the state. And this year they were scheduled to do that. So in order to make sure that those revenues are in line, our millage rate is reduced from 9.9674 mils to 0.9632 mils. And I want to note that our original authorized millage in Cascade Township was 1.1 mils, and it's slowly been rolled back to 0.9632 based on that Headley cap rollback. So for fiscal year 2020, we have two values that we focus on. The first is our state equalized value for all of the real and personal property in Cascade Township. And this is the first year that that number is over $2 billion, which is a very large number. We have quite an array of residential, commercial, and industrial property in the township. And the state equalized value can always be thought of as 50% of the true cash value of the property in the township. So while the SEV is $2 billion, that means if you were looking at the market rate for all those properties, it's over $4 billion. So, and then we have our taxable value. So the taxable value of the township grows at a slower rate than the state equalized value. While the state equalized value is always going to be adjusted to be 50% of that true cash value, taxable value can only go up the rate of inflation or 5% each year, whichever is the minimum. So while that SAV may increase more dramatically, especially during a hot housing market, the taxable value growth is going to be limited to the rate of inflation. And that rate of inflation hasn't been over 5% for a very long time, so it's always going to be the rate of inflation. Just for your information, the difference between our taxable value and our SEV is $310 million, almost $311 million. If we were to capture tax revenue on that entire amount, it would come up to just short of $300,000. If I could have the next slide, Steph. Great. So this is the graph of our real and personal property tax revenues, again, that come from that millage that we levy. You can see it's gone up pretty consistently since 2017 through 2021. And you will note that these revenues grow faster than the rate of inflation, and that is due solely to new property that is coming into the township. So every time you have a new piece of property that ends up on the tax rolls, it's not included in those Headley rollbacks. So we've seen quite a bit of growth in new building in Cascade Township over the past couple of years, and that's reflected in this real and personal property tax growth rate. If I could have the next slide, thank you. So then this is our overall general fund revenues. So this is when you add in all those other revenue sources, the amount of revenue that we bring into the township. And you can see that unlike a lot of cities, villages, or other communities in the area, our revenue sources are diversified. A lot of times when you get into a city, your tax revenues can be 75 to 80% of your revenue stream. In Cascade Township, that's not the take. We get a large amount of our revenue from state sales tax revenue sharing that comes in from the state. We do have interest that we collect, though unfortunately in 2021, our interest is going to be down significantly because the effect of the pandemic has had on interest rates. We do things like we get franchise fees from certain franchises in the township. We get revenue that we collect from our cell towers that are on township property. We collect revenues for services and so on and so forth. So you can see from this graph, our revenues in the general fund kind of peaked in 2019. We're seeing a reduction in 2020. We talked about some of those budget amendments earlier that came from revenue reductions, specifically in interest and state revenue sharing. And then again, we're seeing a slight dip in 2021 as those sources are going to decline a little bit as well. And then we have our overall general fund expenditures. So you can see 2018, 2019, and 2020, we spent a significant amount of our fund balance in the township as we focused on some of those big projects that we had done. In 2018 and 2019, we spent almost an additional $3 million of township funds on redoing local roads in the township. And of course, 2019 and 2020, we did projects such as our new Township Hall project, the cemetery expansion, the Schoolhouse Creek project, and various other projects that were going on as well. You'll see in 2021, we're right now in the budget, we don't have quite as many of those capital improvement projects. So the amount that we're spending is coming down to a rate closer to where we were in 2017. So this is a very busy map, but I think it provides a lot of information to the public on what we do in our general fund. And it's good because it shows not only the diversification of services that we provide through our general fund, but the fact that for the most part, the money that we spend on those is pretty even as well. We don't have any department of the general fund that spends over 15% of the funding that comes into the general fund. And even with that, the ones that are bigger, such as the administrative department, really help service a lot of the other departments as well. So when you go around the graph, you can see, the supervisor manager department, then through the clerk and treasurer, assessing. So we have some smaller ones, especially in 2021. We're not anticipating any elections. So the amount of money that we're spending on elections is significantly lower than we had done this past year. And then you have some bigger ones. We do have some capital outlay that we're planning on this year, though it's not as big as it has been in years past. The benefits insurance department also services all the employees whose wages are budgeted in individual departments. So again, a little bit busy, but I think it provides a good snapshot of how we spend our general fund money for the public.
Thank you.
So then we have our general fund balance as well. So this is the money that we would have in the general fund at the end of the year. We peaked in 2017 with just short of $10 million in the fund balance. And that fund balance had really been built up because the Township Board had anticipated several big infrastructure projects that were going to be done the next couple of years. And then you can see from 2018 through 2020, we slowly spent down that fund balance. And we already talked about that a little bit with the road projects that we were doing and the big capital improvements. If I can get the next slide, Steph. So here's our other tax funds. The governmental accounting model requires that for each one of our millages that we have out there, we keep those monies in a separate fund. And those monies can only be spent on the services and projects that were indicated during those millage questions. So our fire fund is the highest millage that we have in the township. It actually comprised of 3 millages. When you add them together, it comes to 1.3038 mills. That generates just over $2.1 million in funding for the fire fund. The police fund is at 0.4551 mills, and that generates about $740,000 a year for our additional services that we buy through the Kent County Sheriff's Department to police Cascade Township. And that's done through a partnership, the East Precinct, with Ada Township and Grand Rapids Township as well. We have the open space fund at 0.2280 mills. That generates $371,000 a year. The primary expenditure in that fund is the debt service on the on Peace Park and Burton Park that we purchased with bond funding during those years. But there is some maintenance amounts in there as well. The Pathway Fund that was just renewed in 2019 generates $568,000 a year on 0.3484 mills. Those monies are being used right now, not only for the expansion of the Pathway system, but to provide long-term maintenance funding for the Pathway system as well. And then we have the library fund at 0.1486 mils. That generates $240,000 a year. And that funding is really related to the operations and maintenance of the library building and the Wisner Center. The Kent District Library actually operates the Cascade Library, and they do provide some rent dollars to the township as well to help with that maintenance. So when you add up all the funds that we have in the township, not only those tax funds, but our non-tax funded funds as well, things like our infrastructure fund and our building fund, the DDA fund that focuses on capture amounts. These are the revenues for all of those funds combined. So again, peaked in 2019. Revenues come down a little bit in 2020 because of the pandemic, and a little bit further in 2021. And then all of our expenditures as well. Again, I've talked about it multiple times, but 18, 19, and 20 were big spending years for the township, as we did a lot of capital improvements, not only in the general fund, but in some of those other funds as well. Spent a lot of money in this year, expanding the pathway system based on the promises that were made in the millage question in 2019. DDA had some projects as well. So those are all inclusive there. And again, right now, the way the budget is prepared for 2021, not a lot of capital improvements, though I will talk a little bit about that in a minute as well. And then here's our all funds fund balance. So this is if you add up all of the bank accounts at the end of the year for all of these individual funds, where we are at. And again, this follows the same path that it has previously, spending down some of that fund balance, 18, 19, and 20. And then in 2021, we're going to start to see an increase in those all funds fund balance as well. So, and then the last couple slides before I start talking questions, just talk about our millage rates. So when you pay your tax bill to Cascade Township, not only are you paying Cascade Township taxes, but you're paying taxes to other taxing jurisdictions as well that we turn around and send out to those jurisdictions. So the Cascade Township all-in millage rate, including the general fund and the 5 voter-approved funds, is 3.4471 mils. The local school district, and I will note that this is for Forest Hills schools. The number is slightly different for Caledonia and Lowell schools. But the money that gets sent to the local schools, which is in the case for Forest Hills, for their debt service and for their community recreation program, is 4.3126 mils. The state education millage, which is money that the state collects and turns around and sends to local school districts based on their formula, is 6 mils. The Kent Intermediary School District, which also sends money to local schools but funds their own programming as well, is 5.5684 mils. The general or the Grand Rapids Community College is 1.7472 mils. The Kent District Library is 1.2661 mils, and the Kent County millage rate is 6.21 mils. That includes not only the Kent County operating millage, but their voter-approved millages as well, such as their senior program and their jails and the veterans millage and the zoo and museums millage. And then this is just a different way to look at the exact same information. So if you had a Cascade Township resident that had a home with a SEV of, or a true cash value of $330,000 and a SEV and taxable value of half of that, this is what their tax bill would look like. So there'd be $586.77 that would go to Cascade Township, $711.58 that would go to the Forest Hill School District, $990 that would go to the state of Michigan to be reallocated to the schools, $918.78 that would go to Kent ISD, $288.29 that would go to the Grand Rapids Community College, $208.91 that would go to KDL, and Kent County would get $1,024.65 to go to their operating fund and all of their voter-approved millages. So before I open it up to questions from the board and then we get to their public hearing, I have to say I was joking with Grace a little bit about this earlier. I'm actually really excited for this. So this is the 14th budget public hearing that I've been through, and this is the first time that I've gotten a question from a resident prior to the meeting. So you guys all know that I geek out about the budget, and I'm sure you're sick of hearing me talk about it, but I'm happy to answer these questions that we've gotten beforehand. So the first question is, what do the headings mean on the proposed budget report dated 11/30? So I've asked Steph to put this up here. I think this is a great question. So there's a couple different headings. So of course you have the date up on the top, 11/30/20. That's the date that this report was done. And then the items directly to the right of that are just things that are generated by our system. We use the BSNA system to generate our budget that tell a little bit about how this budget was reported. So the budget report was made for Liz Thompson. Liz is our senior accountant and our BSNA guru. So her name appears on the reports that are approved, are developed. Of course, Cascade Charter Township, that's our community. This is the 2020 recommended budget report, which means that this is coming to the Township Board as a recommendation. So when the Township Board approves a budget, the budget will be reprinted, and it will then say the 2020 approved budget report. And then it says calculations as of 12/31/20, and I'll get that in a minute. So when you go through the headings after that, so you have the GL number, and this is just the accounting system that we use to account for all the revenues and expenditures that come into the township. So each individual line item has not only a number that coordinates with the state approved accounting system as well, but a description of where those, what those funds are. I will note that the Township Board approves the township budget on the department level rather than on the GL line item level. And the reason we do that is because we provide a lot of GL line items to give a lot of information to the board and the public. But if you approve a budget on a GL line item, you have to have a budget amendment anytime you go over, say, even $1 of any of those line items. So if you had two GL line items, one for paper, one for pencils, and they're both $100, if you spent $101 on paper and $99 on pencils, you would have to make a budget amendment for that. So the Township Board does approve the township budget at the department level, but then they get monthly reports to understand where the money is being spent. The next one to the right of description is the 2019 activity. So these are actually numbers that have already been audited. So we are required to be audited by the state every year. So they come in and audit all of our numbers, and those are the exact numbers of the monies that we collected and spent in the 2019 budget. The next line to the right of that is the 2020 amended budget. That was the budget that was approved by the Township Board at this meeting in December of 2019. The item next to that is the 2020 activity through 12/31/20. And obviously we're not to 12/31/20 yet not. So what this means is that this is actually the activity through the date this report was printed, which was 11/30/2020. And that just where those, how those line items look so far. There are at times journal entries that need to be done and budget amendments that need to be done as well, which is where you get to that next column, which is the 2020 projected activity. So when the department heads, staff, and myself put the budget together, we take a look at where our budget numbers are, knowing what things might be coming up as well, and determine if the projected activity is exactly where we thought it was going to be, or if a budget amendment might need to be recommended to the Township Board to be approved. And that is what we did earlier in this meeting. And then of course you have the 2021 requested budget. This is the budget that we are asking the board to approve tonight. So that is that was the first question that we got. Steph, if you could put up the second item that I sent to you. The second question is, can you please explain a balanced budget? We hear that all the time, but from what I can tell, it's really vague. Then the board waits to the end of the year and adds in all the details. Seems backwards. My husband and I would like an explanation, briefly I assume, on what balancing the budget means. Also a great question, because balancing the budget means different things to a lot of different people. So a balanced budget on the federal level doesn't mean a whole lot because the federal government doesn't have a requirement to balance their budget, which means that they can spend money outside of what they have in their bank accounts. That is not the case for state and local governments. We are not allowed to go into a deficit situation. So we have to ensure that all of the money that we have are intended on spending during the year is accounted for in one of two fashions: either revenues that are coming in during the current year, or money that we have saved up in our fund balance for expenditures in future years. And Steph, this is the same item for before. Do you have that number 2 screenshot? Still getting the same thing.
Yeah, that's what I have saved under number 2. Just give me a second.
Nope, that's fine. So you can look at it if you get into the packet, but what I wanted to note is if you get to the last page of the expenditures report for the budget that we're asking to be approved, there's a line item that has the total appropriations, the total revenues, the total expenditures, and then there's either a positive or negative number after that. And then for the 2021 budget, it's a small negative number. The negative number is about $30,000. Then it just indicates that we will be spending some of our fund balance in 2021 in the general fund as well, based on the budget. And then it shows what the fund balance is and then what it will be afterwards. So a balanced budget from a local township perspective just means that we are not going into a deficit where we're spending more money that we're either taking in or have on hand. In terms of the budget amendments, majority of the amendments that the township board made tonight, those were decisions that they had made during the year. They make the decision to purchase or renovate the township hall project. That wasn't something that was originally budgeted. So a note is then made that as a part of our accounting housekeeping, we actually have to go back and amend the budget as well to show that the township board approved that expenditure. I've had some conversations with our finance committee and Supervisor LaSprance as well. We've talked about doing that on a more regular basis. So instead of doing that at the end of the year, possibly doing that quarterly. So we'll be looking to hopefully implement that process in 2021. And then the third question is, I don't see any specific projects in the budget that I have heard the township may start in 2021. And that goes back to the conversation we just had. So if there's a project out there where we maybe don't know where the funding is coming from, or if we're not certain the township board is going to go through with that project or not, we typically don't include that project in the actual budget document itself. But if you go through the presentation that I had put in the packet and reviewed at the budget work session back in early December, I do make notes in that presentation as well about some things that might be coming up. And I did go through and pull out a couple of those examples. So we'll be possibly looking at repaving the roads in the Centennial Park, foremost industrial park area. That's really Centennial Park, you know where that is. And then the foremost industrial park is the area kind of 33rd Street, where there's the back door to the Target complex and a lot of industries over there. Those roads are in poor condition, and the township wants to explore possibly repaving those roads, but hasn't made that decision or decided where that funding would come from yet. A big project that the township board will be working on in early 2021 is deciding what needs to be done with the fire station number 1. So if the township board does approve that project, again, we would make the amendment to put that into the budget. Burton Street Bridge, part of the pathway, approval of the pathway millage in 2019 was a pedestrian bridge over I-96 on Burton Street. The township's gotten a significant grant for that project, $1.6 million, but the board will still need to decide where the local match is coming for that. And the board will look at a possible refresh project at the Cascade Library as well. So although those were noted in the presentation, they're not included in the budget currently. And if the township board does decide to do any of those projects, budget amendments will be made in 2021 to allocate those. So thank you, whoever submitted those questions. It's really happy to see that residents are looking at the budget. Of course, at this point, I'll entertain any questions that the board may have. And then, of course, it is a public hearing as well.
I just want to say, good job, Ben. I think the budget process, at least for the last 3 years, has been very thorough, very complete. And I know the board spent Grace's first meeting going over it at length, about 3 hours. And prior to that, the finance committee spent 3.5 hours. So it's a lot to go through, but it's been very well presented and thoroughly explained. So I compliment you on the explanation for the budget for this next year.
Ripley has a comment. I really have to, once again, coattail with Jim on this. Between Ken and Ben and Jim, you play a big part in this. Your expertise in funding and where it's wise to take money from is beyond gratitude. My big worry going forward in this year is, once again, as Ben and I have talked before, about reduced revenue share from the state. And that's yet to be seen. And I guess we'll have to cross those roads when we get to it. That's all.
I just want to add in, Ben, you also helped us a couple of years ago. We put together a very comprehensive document together as a board and mailed it to every resident that talked about that we only get, Cascade, 10.9% of the money that we collect. So most of it goes to other sources, as you showed tonight in your presentation. But that document is still available on the internet. And it was an excellent document to not only show where our tax money is spent, but how and why, and the priorities, and how we involve the public in coming up with those priorities and expenditures, and how dedicated millages are used, and how we compare to other municipalities in Kent County. So I just want to, your budget presentation is really excellent, and kudos again to you and the Finance Committee. But we've also got that document out there that is really good. I thought a nice little 8-page document that we mailed out to residents to really explain how the township works and how we spend our money. So we put a lot of time into that a couple of years ago. So I just wanted to bring it up again.
This is one of the reasons we have a AAA bond rating.
Correct.
Exactly.
So Supervisor LaSprence, if it's at your purview, this would be the time that you would ask for comments from the public for the public hearing.
Thank you. Assistant Manager Fast, do we have anybody out there who would like to make a comment? Who has their hand raised?
We do, Supervisor Lesperance. Mr. Merlin would like to speak.
Go ahead, Mr. Merlin.
Now I'm unmuted, so you should be able to hear me.
Yes.
Question, Manager Swayze, on your headings, because that issue also concerned me a little bit. The first column says 2019 activities, which I assumed would tie to the audit, as you explained. The second one talks about final amended budget. You talked just now about that being the budget that was approved a year ago. So was the original budget?
So the software pulls whatever the current budget is. So that's why that it says amended budget. So if we chose in 2021 to do our budget amendments on a quarterly, monthly, bi-monthly basis, it's always going to pull whatever the latest budget is that's approved by the Township Board.
Now, you also mentioned that you do, in essence, the accounting entries whenever you approve a new project during the year, which shifts the budget. So,
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
You had said that back behind the scenes, you adjust the budget. So does this pick up those numbers in your accounting system?
So the township does not make any changes to the physical accounting system until official amendments have been approved by the township board. Now, what I was referencing is that there are some times that the township board approves an appropriation that is not listed in the township budget. So at that time, we have to make an amendment. And once that amendment is made, then the appropriate accounting changes are made.
So that it probably does reflect then, since you had to make some changes during the year for those capital projects in 2020, it probably does reflect a budget different than that originally approved, but not the one necessarily equal to what was approved tonight, which should be in the projected 2020 column.
Correct.
But the projected 2020 column shows a loss of $3 million in one of your reports, the one that is included in our 2021 budget, and the one that was approved tonight shows a loss of 1.64 million. So they don't match.
Not every projected activity item was included in the budget amendments.
Okay, and this goes to one other just sort of broad question, just so I understand this. In the 2021 proposed budget, you compare revenues and appropriations. In most of your slides, you compared revenues and expenditures. And there's also sometimes where it compares revenues and expenses. What is an appropriation? I thought was what, I don't know. What, are those terms interchangeable or?
Yes, we use those terms interchangeably in the presentation, but I think that's a good point. I think I can focus on using the same terminology in the future to make sure there isn't confusion among that. But for the point of the presentation, yes, I use those terms interchangeably.
Okay, and then just my last question, and I don't want to take up too much of the time, is I looked at the audit last year and we had 4.993 million of unassigned money in the fund. I looked at the report in this packet that showed that we had 2.012 million of unassigned money in our funds. So out of all the money in the funds, only 2 million of it is unassigned. The rest is committed, restricted, allocated, however. So what I'm looking at the question, should I, when I go to sleep tonight, feel comfortable that we have the financial flexibility to deal with contingencies that arise? Last year we had a pandemic. Who knows what we'll have this year? I've got to believe Firehouse number 1 is going to take more money than is in the fire fund. So have we in 2020 by October 30th spent over 60% of our unassigned fund monies, in essence, our flexibility fund?
So I think maybe it would be appropriate for you and I, Craig, to meet either over Zoom at some point and take a better look at the numbers that you're looking at in the audit, because those don't necessarily match up with my understanding. So to answer the broad question, the Township Board does maintain significant flexibility over the funds that are in the general fund. In the past, the Township Board has, assigned funds for certain projects. There's funds assigned in that fund balance specifically for facilities projects as well. And the Township, for the general fund, the board has the ability to assign and unassign those funds based on a simple majority vote of the Township. When you get into all of the other funds, those funds are restricted based on the usages that are in the millage. And that's to make sure that we're not trying to take, fire department funds and spend them on parks and, pathway funds and spend them on fire trucks. So those all appear in the audit as restricted funds, though that restriction is only to what the purpose of that fund is.
So would you say that we have a balanced budget overall, and that we have enough flexibility financially to respond to unanticipated expenditures?
From an administrative perspective, I say that we are very well positioned to do that. There are very few communities in West Michigan or Michigan in general that have the kind of flexibility that we do in our budget.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merlin, even if that was keeping us on our toes. Thank you. Is there a motion?
Supervisor Lesperance, there's no more public comment at this time.
No more?
I move to close public hearing.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is approved. Next part of this, oh, sorry.
That was to close public hearing.
Correct. Do we
Thank you.
don't we need a motion to approve the general special fund budgets? If so, I make the motion.
Support.
Any discussion or any other, Manager Fass, any other comments out there before we vote?
No further comments.
Supervisor Lesperance, if I could.
Yes, please. Thank you, Ben.
I would just like to remind the board of the request that I made during the phone system conversation.
Yes.
And ask that the motion be amended to include the amounts necessary to fund the phone project in 2021.
I include that amendment. Sorry, I forgot about it. Ben, thanks for reminding me. I include the amendment to include the phone system in my motion.
Support.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's a roll call vote.
Oh, yep, that's right.
Oh, thank you. I didn't say, yes, thank you. Don't see that.
And this is for the budget, correct?
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance,
Yes.
thank you.
The motion as amended is approved. Next on the agenda, consider approval of resolution of intent to levy the 2021 millage rates. Manager Swayze, can you walk us through this one as well?
Great. So since you guys have completed the 2021 budget project process, this is the first step in the 2022 budget process. So what this is a bit of housekeeping for us. It's the resolution of the township boards to intent to levy these millages. And the millages that are listed in the resolution are the exact same millages that are approved for the 2020 budget. So the way this process works is the township provides a resolution of intent to levy during, usually in the May timeframe. We get information from the county about whatever rollbacks we may have for our millages. I talked about in our presentation about the Headley rollback process. And then in August of 2021, the township board then considers another resolution to actually levy those millages. So at this step of the process, we always include the maximum amount that the township board can levy. When you get to the process in August of 2021, if there's a decision from the township board that you want to levy less than the maximum millage, you can make that decision at that time.
Thank you. Any comments?
I move to approve the resolution of the intent to levy the 2021 millage rates.
Support.
Assistant Manager Swayze, do we have any comments or anyone with their hands raised in the audience?
There's no public comment at this time.
Thank you. Clerk Slater, could you do the roll call, please?
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce. You're muted.
Yes.
Thank you. Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
trustee Shipley,
yes,
clerk Slater. Yes. Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Yes.
Thank you.
The motion as written is approved. Next on the agenda, consider resolution acknowledging the filing and presentation of the special assessment roll and setting a public hearing for the Thornapple River Special Assessment District 1.
I think there's one you missed, Grace.
Oh, yep, the one right above it. Thank you, trustee Kessel. Consider approval of a Metro Act permit application from Metro Fiber Net LLC. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the Metro Act, which is Public Act 48 of 2002, was enacted as a means to provide statewide oversight through the Michigan Public Service Commission in uniformity to permitted use of public local right-of-ways for telecommunications infrastructure. So we received a application from Metro FiberNet LLC for a Metro Act bilateral permit, and the request is for 15 years. So the township, besides the application fee, which is $500, does not receive any money directly from providers that have permits in our right-of-ways. They pay their money to the Michigan Public Service Commission, and that commission in turn turns money over to the individual municipalities. Currently, we receive in the neighborhood of $17,000 a year in Metro Act permit fees, and those have to be used specifically for right-of-way maintenance activities, and we do that through our road program county. So in your packet, I included a couple items, the permit application from Metro FiberNet LLC, including the required attachments, their bilateral permit form, and the receipt of their payment as well. So since the passage of the Metro Act, there's very little opportunity for the township to request modifications to the permit. We do our research, and the state records indicate there's no issues with Metro FiberNet LLC as a Metro Act permit entity. In our communications with the Kent County Road Commission, who is responsible for permitting the work. So the township actually has to provide the permit, and they have to go to Kent County and actually get the work permitted. The county has indicated that they haven't had any past issues with Metro FiberNet LLC as well. The Township Legal Counsel reviewed and recommended approval of the Metro Act permit for FiberNet LLC. There's no expenditures related to the approval, and granting the request will ensure the township continues to receive Metro Act monies from the state. And with that, staff is recommending the Township Board approve the Metro Act right-of-way bilateral permit request from Metro FiberNet LLC and authorize myself to execute the agreement on behalf of the township.
We do have a public comment, Supervisor Lesbrunz.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Manager Fest. Let's hear from that person or persons.
Keely Shea.
Okay, Ms. Shea, whenever you're ready, thank you.
Oh, am I unmuted? I unmuted myself twice.
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry. Just curious, what does this Metro Act application, what does this allow them? Does this have anything to do with the 5G towers that they're trying to put in anywhere?
So it does not. The Metro Act does not regulate small cell, which is the technology that's used to distribute 5G. This is specifically for things like wiring, and this is underground fiber cabling that they will be installing.
Like for what end use is the wiring for?
They don't, they're not required to indicate that, but almost all of the fiber that's put in the right of way is used for internet service.
Manager Swayze, what happens if, sorry, Ms. Shea, just.
No, thank you. Go ahead.
What happens if the township, besides losing some of that funding, what happens if the board denies that request?
So if the board decides to deny the request, there'll have to be a specific reason. And then that reason would be forwarded to Metro FiberNet, both Metro FiberNet and the Michigan Public Service Commission. More than likely then Metro FiberNet would request that the Michigan Public Service Commission step in and require us to approve the permit unless we disprove it for a specific reason that's allowed. There's not a lot of those. But the township board, if we turn it down, is definitely going to have to have a reason why we turn it down.
Off the top of your head, have you heard of any of those specific reasons that are allowed? Just trying to understand the act.
So a lot of it is going to be if it is going to provide some type of physical safety issue in the township, or is going to jeopardize other critical infrastructure. So in some places, especially like in the city of Grand Rapids, where the right-of-way is small and there's a ton of infrastructure, there simply may not be space for them to run what they want to run, especially if they're going to go underground. So that's typically the most common reason why these are denied. And the Kent County Road Commission has indicated that there's no space or safety issue with the plan that they've put forward.
Thank you. Ms. Shea, do you have any other questions or comments? This is a tricky one, I think, to understand.
No, I really don't understand it, but it just caught my attention. So no more at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else out there?
There are no further comments at this time, Supervisor Lesperance.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from the board? And is there a motion?
Motion by Shipley to approve.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? So this motion, or excuse me, this agenda item is approved as written. Next item on the agenda. It doesn't indicate roll call for these next two, but Ben, I believe these require roll calls, correct?
It is because
Okay.
it's a resolution.
Okay. So first, consider the resolution acknowledging the filing and presentation of the special assessment roll and setting a public hearing for the Thornapple Special Assessment District Number 1.
Great, thank you. So a bit of background on this. This is the process that we've been working with members of the Cascade Thornapple River Association for quite a long time. And as a board have been working on this since late summer this year. But the township received a petition circulated by members of the Cascade Thornapple River Association to make certain improvements to the Thornapple River, including weed control and removal, debris removal, safety enhancements, silt control and removal, and the request for the cost of the improvements to be specially assessed against each parcel of land within the district. So the request is for the cost to be equally assessed against all parcels that front the Thornapple River between the dam and 60th Street, including those parcels that front township-owned property on the river. So there's some parcels where there's a sliver of land between the property that they actually own and the river as well. And that is a artifact of when we were able to obtain the dam back in the 1980s. That's basically the floodplain for the dam. So if the dam backs up, we flood township-owned property instead of personal-owned property. So they've requested the district be implemented for 15 years and that the assessment be $300 per year for each parcel in the district. So we are using Public Act 188 of the Public Acts of Michigan of 1954. And it should be noted, while the petition was received by the Cascade Thornapple River Association, we're using the portion of the act that allows this process to be moved forward on the initiative of the Township Board. And legally, the Township Board is not compelled to carry through the Special Assessment District if you determine it's not in the best interest of the public. So at the September 23rd and October 21st Township Board meetings, the Township Board held public hearing to hear and consider any objection to the public improvements. the special assessment district, the proposed special assessment, and all other matters regarding the public improvement. So after the public hearing, the Township Board approved a resolution, which among other things made the determination to proceed with the project and make the public improvements and provide the directive to the Township Supervisor to cause the special assessment rule to be prepared. So I've included a couple things for you in your packet. There's the resolution of acknowledgement of filing and presentation of the special assessment role to the Township Board and the notice of public hearing. There is the actual physical proposed special assessment role, and there's estimated cost and plans for the Thornapple River improvement. So for this process, we've been using the help of Attorney Cliff Bloom from Bloom Sluggett to assist in developing this special assessment district. We chose Mr. Bloom because he has a specialty in this work and has helped to establish other districts, similar districts across Michigan. So the cost of Mr. Bloom's services, as well as the other direct costs related to the establishment of the district, which is really the printing, mailing, and publication costs, will be charged to the special assessment district if it's established. If the special assessment district is not established, the township's responsible for those costs. If the special assessment district's established, we're recommending the Township Board approve an ad hoc committee that would consist of township staff, township officials, and residents in the special assessment district to provide direction on the expenditures of the SAD dollars. And we'll note that that would be an ad hoc committee. All of the final appropriations, expenses, expenditures will be at the sole discretion of the Township Board. So if the board chooses to approve this resolution tonight, you're putting a couple things in motion. So the special assessment roll will be filed in the office of the Township Clerk and will be available for public examination or inspection. Of course, we'll do things like put it on the Township website as well. And then you'll be setting a public hearing at the regularly scheduled Township Board meeting on January 13th, 2020 for the purposes of reviewing the special assessment roll and for hearing all persons interested in the special assessment roll and any objections to the roll. After the Township Board has held that public hearing, at any point after that, you can choose to approve the fourth resolution, which will in essence approve the special assessment district. So you'll have the public hearing on January 13th. You can choose to approve that resolution that night if you wish. If you want to put it off to another meeting, you can certainly do that as well. So it's anticipated that the establishment of the special assessment district will cost between $5,000 and $10,000. That really consists primarily of legal fees and publication costs. And again, we talked about if it's not established, the township's responsible for those costs. With that, I'm making the recommendation that the Township Board approve the resolution of acknowledgement of filing and presentation of the special assessment roll to the Township Board, notice of public hearing for the Thornapple River Special Assessment District number 1.
Thank you, Manager Swayze. Any comments?
And there's a comment, the public hearing is held January 20. In the Kent
Say that again?
In the memo, it says that there's going to be a public hearing on January 20 at the Kent Library.
I guess I'm not seeing that. I apologize.
Well, the Laraway one says January 13, shall hold a public hearing on January 13, 2020. Is that one we already had?
No, January 13th, 2000. Oh, that should say 2021. My apologies.
It also says Kent District Library, Cascade Township Branch at Jack Smith Avenue. Are we going to be having a virtual meeting or an in-person meeting?
So don't know yet. So if you go to the next page of the resolution after that, it says, or by the remote conferencing app Zoom in accordance with Public Act 228 of 2021.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Ken, is there a question? I didn't print it. Is it 220 or, 120 or 113? When is a public hearing?
So the resolution has a typo in it. It says January 13th, 2020, and it should be January 13th, 2021.
And the Thornapple one should be January 20, 2021.
January 13th, 2021.
Thornapple one? We don't have to figure that out now, just kind of go over those again.
The date of the public hearing, Ken,
Yeah,
is different on the two resolutions.
I think so. I'm looking at the Thornapple one says January 13, 2020 at 7 o'clock at the Kent District Library, Cascade Township Branch.
Correct, and it should be January 13, 2021, not 2020.
Yep.
With that correction in the resolution, I'd move to approve considering the resolution and setting the date for the public hearing as January 13th, 2021.
Support.
Supervisor Lesperance, there is a public comment.
Okay, thank you, Assistant Manager Fast. Let's hear from that person. Resident.
Mr. Merlin.
Go ahead, Mr. Merlin.
It is me again. I think that same typo occurs also in the actual notice. It appears twice in that resolution. I think there's an additional typo in it where it refers to Act 228 of 2021. It was Act 228 of 2020. And those same mistakes occur also on the special district for, I think, the Laraway Lake Special District.
The next item.
The next item, yeah. And I
We might
suspect
get- Sorry,
I
go
expect
ahead.
there are only typos, but maybe these will actually be recorded in the minutes.
They'll be corrected to the correct date. That was in my motion.
And then
the
if,
correct act.
We're gonna do a separate motion for the Laraway Lake project.
No, but you have the act too that's incorrectly dated.
No, that's
Thank
today.
you.
Correct, so the Public Act needs to be referenced to 2020 Public Act, and the meeting needs to be referenced to 2021 meeting.
Correct.
Thank you. Any other issues? Clerk Slater, roll call, if that's the proper time.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes,
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance,
Yes.
thank you.
So this resolution is approved. Next resolution, identical, except filing and presentation of the special assessment role and setting a public hearing for Laraway Lake special assessment. Noting district number 1, the same errors in the packet will be corrected as above. Any comments or motions?
I move we approve as amended.
Support.
Roll call, Clerk Slater, please.
Trustee Kessel,
yes,
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance,
Yes.
thank you.
This resolution is also approved, taking into account those specific amendments. Next up, last but not least, the last item within this article, consider resolution, or I'm sorry, it says roll call. I don't know if that's, Manager Swayze, I thought we said, I don't know if we need the roll call, but let's consider the appointments to various boards and commissions. And then noted we're going to take each commission or committee one at a time, as discussed previously. Let's just start off with the Planning Commission. Any questions or comments? And I just, again, I think I said earlier, but I did not realize that that it came across as automatically removing the 3 current members from the application process. I spoke to 2 of them at length, one of them via email. All 3 are interested. All 3 are enthusiastic. I know that's hard to find sometimes, and all 3 are just as much in consideration. Coming in from the outside as a resident, and then now new board member, especially after an election, there were more than 3, but I had narrowed it down to 3 people that, in my view, were qualified and willing to serve. After having spoken to the people who currently on the board, it makes the choice a little trickier. So if there are any other applications, happy to consider those as well, but I just wanted to note that. And then as far as the ex officio appointment to the Planning Commission, when I read the statute and consulted with legal counsel, the wording was clear that the non-board members that are currently sitting continue to stay on that in their spots until there's a new appointment made. The ex officio member for the board did not have that same language, and the way it was worded, it indicated that that term, although you wouldn't see this play out normally very often because there's just not as much turnover, election turnover, but that expired naturally when we took our new term, when these new terms for the board started November 20th. So that seat is currently vacant and needs to be, needs board approval. There is no automatic holdover. I realize that there's a lot of board members, one position. This is nothing personal. This only, my decision for which board member to put up for appointment was based on Trustee Nordhook's years of experience in real estate, his also his years of experience as in the inspection process for homes, as it directly is related to the Planning Commission, and also the strong desire from the public for some fresh perspective, some fresh and the need for oversight. So nothing personal to anyone else on the board. It was strictly, I thought, the right choice. Thank you.
You know, we had a unique situation this time around, and
Yes.
Jack Lewis was appointed to serve. Jack became ill, and we appointed Sue to fill his unexpired term, and she has only served 1 year. And I wonder if she was asked if she wanted to serve again.
I was not.
Well, I agree with Jim. Sue has brought some fresh perspective, and I sat through some of the Planning Commission meetings. I mean, I was on the Planning Commission for 9 years. And then recently there were some big cases. So I participated through the Zoom meetings, and I thought Sue provided a lot of fresh perspectives and did a great job, as did the whole Planning Commission. They did a really good job with some very tough cases. So I think, you know, Sue's done a great job, and she gives some diversity to the Planning Commission as well, and has done a great job on the board as well, and has served as clerk. So I'm very comfortable if Sue wants to stay on.
Thank you. And I did not put Ms. Slater up for appointment. Same reasons I've gone over. So I appreciate it. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but right now the only board member that's up for appointment for board approval is Trustee Nordhook.
And I have to ask you, Sue, was that a position you were interested in continuing to serve in?
Yes, I am.
It would be unusual for us not to reapprove somebody that was already serving and had not filled out their whole term.
I recognize that. Yeah, and I looked back on all the minutes that are available online, and it's unusual to have a heated election where the current supervisor is beat by or replaced. That hasn't happened. And also at the same time, I didn't see any questions by board members about Mr. Bean's former appointment. So I recognize it's awkward. I get it. But right now, Trustee Nordhook has my appointment, and Sue, Ms. Slater, this is absolutely nothing personal. I am solely motivated by getting the strongest planning commission based on person's experience, nothing else. And I appreciate your willingness to serve. It's hard to find people to serve. So,
Well, and she's the only woman. So
yeah, I don't
that
think
creates
gender
some
should, I don't think
diversity.
gender is a real issue. I mean,
This requires a roll call vote, doesn't it?
Yes.
A motion first. I haven't heard, is there a motion out there yet?
No.
the only woman, how so? Because we've got member Creeder, Deidre Deering.
Right.
Who else? Those two are women on the planning commission. And then we've got myself on the board. Am I missing something as far as women and men ratio?
I'm talking about on the planning commission.
Right.
Are there any women?
Ms. Deering, Ms. Creeder, and I don't, there's two right there.
Is there a motion?
You have to make a motion and somebody has to make a motion. I'll make a motion.
Motion,
Who was that?
Shipley,
Thank you.
What is the motion?
motion to approve the appointment, I guess, to the planning commission.
And who's
Who are you
The only member-
nominating, John?
the only member? I got you. Okay. Yep, I understand.
We're seconding it just to take action. So is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote. Trustee
Mr.
Kessel.
Wait, and Mr. Nordhook, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do this on purpose, but is there anything you'd like to say? You and I have spoken, but I know that this is the first time that the board has gotten together on this issue.
I just have a lot of experience in the real estate, 17 years in that. I've been building, I've been 20 years in inspections. So I've got a little bit of a background on this stuff. Been in front of them a few times in different areas, but not this one. Any questions?
Roll call vote.
Trustee Kessel.
No.
Trustee McDonald.
No.
Trustee Shipley.
Yes,
Treasurer Pierce.
No.
Trustee Nordhook.
I'll go present.
Clerk Slater. No. Supervisor Lesperance.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
So the motion as far as appointments to the planning commission is denied. The three current regular members will stay on per statute. The ex officio member is currently vacant until the board approves another member. Thank you.
Ben, is that right?
So I think what I'll have to do is to get a couple opinions on that, because I think the law needs to be interpreted. I think if you look at the Planning Commission Enabling Act, I think the language does talk about terms, which isn't necessarily congruent with our local ordinance. So my plan is to ask for two opinions, one from our legal team, also one from the legal team at the Michigan Township Association, to ask what it is going forward. So I will provide that information to all the board members as soon as I have it.
Who would serve as our ex officio member then until that time? Is anybody, or we just don't have one?
That's the issue. We don't know yet.
So we have we don't know yet. So I will expedite that as fast as possible.
Okay.
Thank you, Ben. So Planning Commission, we've handled. Zoning Board of Appeals.
I have a question. And I don't know, so that's why I'm asking. Was there Mr. Mead is a member now, right? Is that true of the zoning board, Tom?
Yeah,
Is
he's
there
really
a-
good.
Okay, is there anybody else whose term expired or only Mr. Mead? Ben?
Mr.
For
Mead is the
interpretation.
only, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Ben. We looked at this.
Yeah, Mr. Mead is the only member with an expired term right now.
Okay, thank you.
And the language as far, we do have the ex officio member from our board, Trustee McDonald, and the language in that is different, which Ben and I both agreed when we looked at it. It indicates that he does not require reappointment. He's still there. It's not based on the legislative term.
Yeah, I think that's right.
I make a motion that we appoint Aaron Mead. He's really exceptional. He's a great guy. He's very knowledgeable. He's very involved. He's really takes a listen to and follows precedent, which is really important in the ZBA. And Aaron's been a real valuable asset to the zoning board.
Support?
And are there any, Assistant Manager Cass, I'm sorry, I should have done this before and I didn't. Any public comments out there, hands raised?
We do have one raised hand, which is Keely Shea.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Shea, thank you.
Hi.
Anytime you're ready, thank you.
Oh, I don't know. I keep on. Okay, thank you. Again, this is all new for me. I guess this is my third board meeting, and as a Cascade Township resident, this is honestly fascinating. So I have a couple of questions just listening to the whole thing about the Planning Commission appointee, and I appreciate hearing about Mr. Nordike's history and I guess experience for this role. And I hear all of you talking about Sue Slater. Could we please hear what Sue Slater's experience and history is that would make her such a good fit for the Planning Commission?
I think we're talking about, we're up for a vote on the zoning board right now, aren't we?
Yeah, we're not on Planning Commission anymore.
Is there any, I agree that motion is.
Oh,
passed.
I'm sorry. I had my hand raised back then, and
Oh, well then go ahead, Ms. Shea, that's fine. I apologize. I meant to ask and I forgot. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
yeah, so no, that's my question. I'm just curious as to, I appreciate there's some discussion here. I would just really like to hear what Sue Slater's experience is.
Thank you, Ms. Shea.
Well, I was asked to serve Jack's unexpired term by Rob last year, and he thought I was duly qualified, and I had, of course, by that time been on the Township Board for 3 years. So he asked me to do it, and I have thrown myself into that and learned all I could, and I think I've done a good job. I have investigated situations when there's a case that comes up, whether it's regarding fencing or extra addition. I've gone out to the property to look at it, to see what we're talking about so that I can make a fair judgment as well.
Thank you. Roll call? Or I'm sorry, Ms. Shea, do you have any follow-up?
No, that answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you ready for the roll call on zoning?
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance.
Yes.
Thank you.
Standing committees. Again, nothing personal, but the memo on the appointments.
Don't you have to do
Any
DDA?
questions? Oh, I didn't know there was
DD
a
and
specific.
Construction.
Does it matter? Whichever one you would like to do next is fine with me. I didn't know there was a specific.
No, I was just going on the order you provided them to us.
Oh, how they're attached to the packet.
Yeah,
Whichever one is next is great.
DDA.
Okay. Motion and discussion.
I have the same question that I had on zoning. Is Scott the only one up for reappointment? I don't know. I really don't know who is on for reappointment. Is there anybody else that was up for renewal or not? Is this the only one?
Well, it's a tricky, the way it's phrased, up for renewal, there are two spots whose terms, the terms expire at the end of the year that require appointment, supervisor appointment, board approval. So the up for renewal,
That's what he means.
That's
Well,
what I mean. I'm looking. You told us on planning 3 were up for renewal, but I didn't know it. Just like with Aaron, I didn't know if he was the only one, and I don't know if Scott is the only one.
Mr. Vogel?
Yes.
So there's 2 on the memo, and the seat that the other seat expires is Diana Kingsland.
Oh, I don't see her name on here.
No, because the names on there are Mr. Vogel, and then there's a resident, Michelle Kalala. And the reasoning behind that is Ms. Kingsland. I had spoken to her, and she has 16. She's the longest serving member on the board, or had served on the board. There was 4 very interested, very competent, qualified people, any of whom would still fit the requirements that the majority of the people on the DDA are business owners. So based on qualifications, Michelle Kalala was a fantastic choice.
Well, I
get that there
wondered.
hasn't been a lot of changeover, and I get that you've got a different person making the appointments. I didn't come at it as in who's up for renewal. I came at it as what spots require appointments, who is interested in those spots, and who has the experience and qualifications to best serve on those boards. And Ms. Kalala was really interested. She worked well. It's all on there, but I didn't come at it from that perspective. So I know we're kind of.
I think you're right. I think she's got a lot of experience. I just wondered, Kingsland, was she interested in reserving? That's what I wanted to know. Did she say she was?
Yes. So, and I talked to her about, it was nothing personal. I appreciated her service. And there were other people who wanted a turn to serve as well. Mr. Vogel had recently been appointed. So having served 16 years with multiple people, her experience and the desire for other people to have a turn outweighed the fact that Ms. Kingsland also wanted a turn. That was my thinking. Again, nothing personal. And I realize these appointments, you're dealing with a new person. Tough calls, nothing personal.
No, I think we understand that. And I Jim's point, I think, might be just one of courtesy. And it sounds like you did talk to her. That's good. I made a courtesy call. We understand if somebody's been on 16 years. I mean, I was the only person ever term limited off the planning commission because we made that law while I was a planning commission member. And then after I served all my terms and was term limited out, a year later, they voted to remove the term limits. But I just want to make sure, I think Jim's the same, want to make sure that Diana was talked to and it was explained to her just out of professional courtesy, if anything else.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, Kingsland family has been around for a long time, and I like your appointment. I like this Michelle's qualifications. I just wanted to know I mean, with the active DDA plan going for the Tuffy muffler space and the Holly Perkins building that we've acquired, they've worked on this, and I haven't been on the DDA. Tom, you know whether you have served on it. If this is important in carrying out those plans going forward, I didn't know she'd served 16 years. But the one thing I'd be concerned about is somebody that wants to serve, and if they've served effect, but Miss Kayla, or Clea, how do you say her name? Cleela?
Layla?
Yeah, she certainly is impressive with the background she has. I just wondered if, you know, Diane or Diana was interested in serving again. So that's
Yeah,
all.
she was.
That was just my question.
I corresponded with her over a month ago so that she wasn't blindsided by the process. And also, well, first to just see if she was interested in returning.
Okay. That's all I wondered.
Well, I think
It's a good question.
I would, I know it's a tough call, but I would make a motion to approve the two following people to the DDA.
Support.
Any public comments?
There are no public comments at this time, Supervisor Lesperance.
Thank you. Roll call, Clerk Slater?
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the two appointments outlined in the memo are approved. The next committee or commission up for discussion, CBA. I don't have the memos, but is that what you guys see in front of you?
Is that the construction?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Circuit Board of Appeals.
Motion to approve?
Who said that, Jim?
Yeah.
Support.
Thank you.
I supported Sue.
Thank you.
Assistant Manager Fast, are there any comments in the audience that are waiting to be heard?
There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. Roll call?
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance.
Yes.
Thank you.
The appointments outlined in the Construction Board of Appeals are approved. Next up for appointment is the standing board committees.
Motion to approve?
Support.
Ken.
Assistant Manager Fast, do we have any public comments?
There's no public comment at this time.
Thank you. Roll call if it's the appropriate time.
Trustee Nordhook,
Yes.
Trustee McDonald,
Yes.
Trustee Kessel,
Yes.
Trustee Shipley,
Yes.
Treasurer Pierce,
Yes.
Clerk
John,
Slater.
don't sound so enthusiastic.
I'm trying to stay awake.
Clerk Slater, yes. Supervisor Lesperance.
Yes.
Thank you.
So the standing committee appointments are approved as written. Did I miss any? Is that all 5?
Yes, it is.
Thank
We're done.
you. Moving on to Article 11. If there are any stragglers out there, now is the time, Assistant Manager Fast, for any public comments.
Thank you. We do have Miss Keely Shea.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Shea, whenever you're ready.
Hi all, and I know it's been a long meeting, but this was the question that I have had, well, for the last month. So I think it's important. So given the extreme level of fraud during the 2020 presidential election, I do have some questions regarding the Cascade election process. And I would like to know who oversees the entire election process in Cascade Township.
It would be me.
So, okay, well, thank you. So this is all new for me. So is there also an oversight committee for the township election process and the procedures that are employed?
So Michigan elections are run very decentralized by local municipalities. Some states run them by counties. We run them by local jurisdictions. And we have oversight from Kent County Director of Elections, who then has oversight from State Board of Elections.
Okay, so then who made the decision or who was responsible for the placement of the Sharpie markers at the polling stations?
That was instructions from Kent County.
From Kent County. Do we know the reasoning behind the Sharpie markers?
We were told that the ballot ovals would not line up on the other side. So even if it bled through, it doesn't line up with an oval for something on the back.
But why use a Sharpie marker instead of the pens that we've used for all these years?
That's just what we were told to do.
So Clerk Slater, did they make the county elections? Did they make specific reference to pens versus Sharpies? I noticed that too, that first year.
We've used pens other times. We used pens for years with the old equipment. We were just told to use Sharpies. Goodness, I didn't know Dominion was a mess.
I didn't either, and I didn't recognize the, yes, this was in hindsight. I'm with you. I didn't pick up on that, but the Sharpies being the only choice.
That's what we were
That
told
was my
to do.
next question. You said Dominion, so you do know that Cascade Township used Dominion software then?
Yes, I can give you a little background on that. 3 years ago, we were called to clerk's meeting and shown 3 different vendors of equipment. And we had a demonstration. It was Hart and can't remember the other one, Padley would know, and Dominion. And they were all demonstrated to us by the vendors. And we kicked out the county clerk and director of elections, and the clerks, just the clerks, voted on which one we wanted, and we wanted Hart. And we were told 2 or 3 weeks later that the county was buying Dominion. So frankly, it was above our level of decision-making ability. It was decided by the county. And of course, looking back at what we know now, shouldn't have gone with Dominion. I don't see how we can ever use it again, but that's above my pay grade.
Thank you for sharing that, because this is what so many of us are questioning. And I think we have to look at this level, at our township level, and then we need to go to the next level so they're just saying this. So do we have facts and figures of actual voter numbers for, let's even just say the presidential election, Trump versus Biden in Cascade Township, and John James versus Peters?
Well, they've been so skewed. I didn't screenshot that on the night of the election when I went to bed at 2 a.m. I wished I had, unfortunately. So, and if you want numbers of people that voted, that's something, that you can look up on Kent County website. It's public information. If you are interested in looking that up on Kent County, just go to elections tab and you can get information by township.
So specifically, that's accesskent.com.
Thank you.
Accesskent.com, and then you can click on elections and you can see every municipality and how all the votes were cast.
So then, Sue, what can we do at a township level to look at what happened and where the fraud did occur? What, and even go back and count ballots? What can we do?
What fraud?
Well, I'm a person who tries to do the right thing honestly all the time. And the people who work for me are that way. And for example, the fraud that went on in Detroit, I listened to the training session from the supervisor, and she was telling them to backdate ballots, and she was telling them all kinds of stuff that is not legal. We don't do that here in Kent County. And I feel that Kent County is extremely secure and honest. And on my level, I mean, that's the most we can do. I don't cheat. We don't cheat.
No, I appreciate hearing that.
Did you have any interactions with the county at the county level that raised any eyebrows? This is just interesting to hear.
Heavens no. We turned in our all our paperwork on election night at 2 a.m., drove right up to the county and dropped it off, and it was pristine, clean. So anything that happened on the back end on Dominion, I wash my hands.
This is helpful, just very helpful.
It is. Thank you. Yeah. And I just truly want, to look at what we can do in the future. I mean, obviously I'd still love to look at it now, but what we can do to make sure that, I mean, the Sharpie markers were definitely questionable to me, just wondering what the reasoning was behind it. So
well, again, we thought that our board of election was honest, straight up, but that's what we were told to do. So we did what we were told.
Supervisor Lester, we do have some other residents that are waiting.
Okay, we're in this far. We can do it. Let's listen. And thank you, Clerk Slater. That was interesting and helpful.
You're welcome.
I have a resident named Dan.
Go ahead, sir. If you could tell your name and your address, it's easier for the clerk's office when they record the minutes.
Sure. My name is Dan Spons. I'm at 7145 Berger Drive. I'm a lifelong resident of Forest Hills. I've been a Cascade resident now for over 30 years. I just want to congratulate Supervisor Lesperance on her election win and to say that I'm one of your many supporters in our neighborhood. I'm excited about your commitment for greater transparency and citizen engagement in all levels of the township. I'm a little disappointed with the planning committee selection. I thought that a pretty good case was made with experience cited for Mr. Nordyke or Mr. Nordick. I may have that wrong. And I didn't hear any, with all due respect to Ms. Slater, I did not hear any qualification statements other than the fact that she had served in that role in place of Jack Smith. So I'm hoping the board is a little more considerate in the future of your recommendations and the perspective that you bring. I know there's a lot of people out there who are looking for positive changes and feel that you can drive those. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And yes, Mr. Merlin has raised his hand.
Mr. Merlin, go ahead, sir.
I just have
your address if you want. We'll get it.
6333 Thornhills Court.
Thank you.
I just had two follow-up questions on the election. Who keeps track of the voter rolls in Cascade Township?
We do that in the clerk's office, and it's on a statewide database called Qualified Voter File. It's tied to the driver license registrations. We continually update that with people that move out or pass away. So we keep our voter rolls very updated.
So just as an example, so you get word, how do you know when someone has died?
Well, I get it from the county. I get regular emails from the county, and the week before the election, we were checking that every day. In fact, the night before the election, we removed 6 people from the voter roll.
Okay,
Oh,
so
okay.
you were making those last minute changes so that the county system wasn't quite up to date on all of their changes, that they were, again, I just want to make sure that if we're going to have mail-in voting, that we have voter records kept up to date with some assurance that we aren't sending ballots to people who may have moved or may have died. Having
So
had one relative who, when he went to vote, learned he already had voted.
Is that in Cascade, Mr. Merlin?
No, that was in the Chicagoland area.
There's your answer.
There's your answer.
The other question I had was how many votes, if you know, were, or how many ballots were, in essence, what's the name for it in an election process, where you
Absentee?
no, throw them out, in essence, where they're not, you look at them and they're not recognized as valid ballots.
So if I get a ballot back that is not a signature match, we will call the person and ask them to come in and verify. If we get a ballot that is received after 8 o'clock on Tuesday evening of election day, that is rejected. We go right into QVF and reject it. If we get any kind of these anomalies like addresses and so forth, those are kept up to date constantly by my election specialist, who that's her primary job right now, is to keep those updated. And like I said, we were updating that the night before the election with current deaths. And so we got ballots back on election day of someone who had died. When you go into, it's a barcode scan at every step of the process. Application sent, application received, back by us, ballot sent, ballot received. So every step of the process, it has to be scanned in, and that's how we verify where it is in the process. You can't, that's why you can only vote once.
And hopefully only when alive.
Exactly.
Clear Slater, this was helpful, and thanks for doing such a great job explaining it. Just especially being unexpected at the end of a long meeting.
There's that.
But you'd handled it fantastically. Any more questions, Mr. Merlin? Or follow up?
No. Thank you.
Assistant Manager Fast, anyone else out there?
There's no further comment at this time.
Thank you. Article 12, Manager Swayze or Assistant Manager Fast, are any comments by either of you that you'd like to make?
I do not have any comments tonight. You guys that got to listen to me speak in length about a couple items, so I will pass. And if Stephanie has anything she'd like to add, I will turn the time over to her.
No, thank you. Not at this time.
You both have done, you've been so fantastic, so professional, and have worked so hard. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure everyone else does.
Thank you.
Article 13, any members of the board that would like to make comments?
Simply does. First of all, I'd like to thank Keely, Dan, and Craig for attending tonight. By God, come back the next meeting and bring your neighbors with you. We need your input. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment. I think this was a tough meeting to chair for the first time. I think you did a good job, Grace.
Oh, thanks.
And the issue, Timmy, I want to say to you, isn't so much you at all as an appointee to the planning commission. It's more kind of what we've done in the past. And while we can make changes in that, I know, having served on the planning commission and zoning board, being appointed, I think the first year I was on planning, I hardly said anything because it took a lot of time to get up to speed. And I've been in the finance world my whole career. So I think that with the reason why I voted against that, I think Sue, if she wants to serve and has only served 1 year, deserves the opportunity to fill out a term of her own. It wasn't not personal. I want to make that clear. Just like you did on your appointment to the DDA, wasn't personal. It was a choice. So I want you to know that, Timmy. And Grace, I think you did a great job chairing this big fat agenda meeting tonight.
Thank you, Trustee Castle. I wanted to say that this is the first time we've all been together, and it's tough coming in as a resident and then now seeing it from the inside. But Assistant Manager Fast, Manager Swayze, everyone at the Township office, whatever preconceived notions I had as a resident after a contentious election, everything I've seen has really been fantastic. And hopefully that as we get to know each other and as the election becomes farther and farther away in the past, I'll have the same. It's tough, right? But as we get to know, I get to know the other members, and you get to know Mr. Nordhook. I don't know if it'll make our easier decisions easier or harder, but I appreciate the explanation. Just look forward to more meetings in the future.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah,
Happy holidays.
Yeah. Oh.
Thank you. Article 14.
I just wanted to ask, could I plant a seed for next year?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to say that we have a really exciting agenda the next few years for the township. We've got the fire station coming up, and that was the residents' #1 priority. We've got the investigation of a potential fire station 3. We've had a plan out there from the DDA for a gathering space, and that was the #4 priority that the residents voted on when we did a massive survey, the only one I know we've ever done. And the #4 priority, again, was that gathering space, that community feeling. And so we've had a plan out there from the DDA for 6 or 7 years that we turned down, but it's still active. We've got the potential plan going down where the Tuffy Muffler is to extend Tassel Park. We've got a plan for that. I think it was really smart that we tabled it, but we've also talked over the years about the potential right of first refusal to acquire the Forest Hills Administration Building, which is a perfect location on Cascade and Burton because it's right in the middle of the neighborhood, surrounded by tons of kids. So my only seed I want to plant is that, and we can discuss this in detail later, is maybe next year have the infrastructure committee meet with the DDA and meet with a few staff members and the parks committee and take an overall look at what are our needs, because I think there are some underserved population, and that's mostly teenagers. We've got stuff for kids. We've got stuff for, the all-inclusive playground that accommodates seniors to help young kids and their grandkids. We've talked about an amphitheater at the library in the gathering space, which makes a ton of sense. We kind of saw a small amphitheater down next to Tassel Park. It doesn't make sense that we have 2 of them. So maybe we just kind of take a comprehensive view amongst ourselves first about what some of our potentials are. The DDA has also talked about a mobile skating rink. If that goes anywhere, or the skate park they've talked about, that's perfect for Cascade and Burton. I think that was actually Ben's idea. So anyhow, maybe we should just kind of, instead of be all myopically look at things independently, sit together first, some of the groups, plant that seed, and then come back with some other ideas. So with that, Merry Christmas to everybody.
Merry Christmas. And Ben, to his credit, brought up the fact that very issue and a strategic plan from time to time. There's money set aside in the budget to just make sure that we have those discussions and that the residents are still, we're aligned with them. So I think that's a fantastic idea.
Ken, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Ken, you're known for the adjournment
You're known for
motion.
this, Ken.
I move we adjourn.
Support.
Thank you.
Do we have to take a vote or let's just do it?
Yeah, we have to vote.
Yeah,
All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
All those opposed?
Hey,
You stay there then, John.
okay.
Hey, maybe we get to do
Give
this
me
in
breakfast
person
in the
because
morning, Ben.
I
Charge
can
of
hear them in the conference room.
They are.
Hi,
All
everybody.
masked up. So
Merry
long,
Christmas.
everybody. Merry
Bye.
Thank you.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Have a great night.
Okay.